I want to talk about three different peoples: the Igbos, the Japanese, and the Germans, who passed through some experiences that were in some ways different and in some ways they were similar. The similarity in the experiences they passed through was that the three nations were defeated in war. I would call what happened between the Igbos and the British war because it was one nation rising against another nation and both of them fighting. Ultimately, one side won, the other side lost. Same thing happened in the case of the Japanese and in the case of the Germans. Now, relax and get the story. When the British Empire decided to consolidate its colonies in Africa, it waged war against a lot of them. The Igbos was one of the Igbo nation was one of the nations the British waged war against. After 33 years of fighting, and the British were assured that they had radically pacified the Igbos. They took the last remaining step to ensuring that the people were a defeated people. What did they do? They took aim. They aimed directly at the religion and culture of the Igbo people, which is called Omenana. Looking very carefully at the people, hazily, through a haze, because everything was not very clear to them, I'm sure, they observed that the people were led by their god, whom they called Chukwu, who was represented by their elders and priests. What did they do? They lopped off the connection between the peoples and these entities I mentioned. I'll repeat, the people were led essentially by their god, whom they called Chukwu, who was represented in the world by their elders and their priests. The elders are the Okenye, the priests were Ezemwa, and the people essentially were a nation of priests. But the primary priests were these individuals I mentioned, the elders and the Ezemwa. What the British did was to disconnect these people from these groups from the people themselves, and they handed over the people to another group. Very, very carefully, they went round the Igbo society, gathering all these disreputable characters. Chinua Achebe of blessed memory, the greatest writer to come out of Africa in the 20th century, describing the category of people the British lined up. He referred to them as ruffians. The British gathered all the ruffians among the Igbos together and appointed them kings over the Igbo people. The ruffians are not the people to protect culture. They barely understand what culture meant. So the people having been handed over to their ruffians to lead them, you can only imagine the outcome of what happened. Mistakes upon mistakes. Now let's take a look at the Germans. After World War II, after Germany had been roundly defeated by the Allies looked at Germany very, very carefully. And I believe that the Allies had gifted leaders. They must have thought about the consequences of destroying the leadership of a nearly 100 million nation in the center of Europe, leaving it leaderless. It would have been unstable for years. What we found in Iraq after Saddam Hussein was what we would have found in Germany. So what did they do? The Allies got the principal Nazis, those they could catch, and executed them for their war crimes and the crimes against humanity they committed. But left the rank and file in charge, the teachers and everybody who could run a society. And all those people, it didn't take up to 20 years before Germany rose again because the leadership was left intact. Virtually the same thing happened to Japan. Japan was also beaten by the US after two bombs were dropped at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. What did the Americans do? They did not interfere with the core of Japanese religion and culture, that is the emperor. The Japanese made one request: don't molest the emperor and Japan will give up. The emperor was not molested and Japan was left alone. So what happened was, because their religion and culture was not, and we are not interfered with, rising up was very easy for the Japanese, because what you destroyed was bricks and mortar, but you did not touch what tells the people what to do in the morning, what to do in the night, and what to do in the evening. That's basically what happened in the case of the Germans too. The people that knew how to lead them, the people that knew how to run government, the people that knew what and what mattered in the society, were left alone. And they simply took off from where they stopped. Brick and mortar, you could replace, but you cannot replace culture. But in the case of the Igbos, they took away the people who had any respect at all for the culture and replaced them with people who disreputable characters and ruffians. And what did these people do? They themselves led the fight against the culture. And at the end of the day, the Igbo people themselves, having been misled, having been disconnected from Omenana, had no qualms from even going to war against the Almighty God Chukwu. And that is why, decades, over a century after the British defeated the Igbos have not risen up again. But barely 20 years after the defeats of Germany and Japan, these powers rose up, and today, if you do a count of the 10 most successful countries in the world, and you don't include Germany and Japan, go and do a fresh count. The Igbos would have risen up too if the British had treated them differently, but the British did not treat them differently because of the nature and culture of the religion of the Igbos. Omenana is an egalitarian religion. The British culture was imperialistic and feudal. So oil and water could not mix. The only way for the British thought they could deal with the Igbos was to put this society on the path of endless decline. And that is what we are looking at today. And without going back to the culture, without going back to the religion, without going back to Omenana, you can take it to the bank. The Igbo society will continue to decline until it ultimately dissolves into nothingness. Like, subscribe, share, invite your friends. Let's turn this channel into a channel of 5 million subscribers. Thank you.